I'm Melanie Cooper, the local Landcare coordinator for Weddin Landcare. I'm here today with Mikla on Mikla and her partner Wayne's beautiful property Rosemont near Grenfell. We're here today because it's the 1st of September and it's Wattle Day, so happy Wattle Day. Normally Weddin Landcare hold an annual Wattle Day walk on Mikla's property Rosemont. But this year we are unable to hold it due to coronavirus. This year would have been the 10th anniversary of Wattle Day here on Rosemont, so we wanted to do something special. So we're going to bring you a virtual Wattle Day walk. Mikla has an Order of Australia medal for her commitment to the environment and to wildlife, and she has an extensive knowledge of native plants, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about wattles with Mikla on this beautiful sunny day.
Hi, welcome to Wattle Day 2020 and to our home Rosemont in Grenfell. Wattles are my favourite plant. There are over 1,000 species of wattle all over Australia, so we tend to think that eucalypts dominate our vegetation, but in fact it's the wattles. And there are so many wattles that at any one time, anywhere in Australia, there are wattles flowering somewhere. This wattle here, unfortunately, is not flowering this year. Well, it is, it's got little buds on it, but it's not flowering yet. This is our national floral emblem, the Australian floral emblem. This is Acacia Karawang, or golden wattle. It was declared our national anthem in the bicentenary year, 1988. The wattle colours of green and gold are our national colours, and the wattle features in our honours system, the Australian honours system, which was established in 1975, and I'm wearing my Order of Australia medal, which features a wattle flower. So today we're going to have a wander and look at some of the wonderful wattles that feature in our landscape. This is one of the most valuable of the local wattles in this area. This is Acacia dinieye. It was named after a Mr. Dean who was a train driver, and he discovered this wattle while he was driving a train in Victoria back in the late 1800s. It grows from between 2 to 9 metres tall. It's a very open and spreading wattle. It has bipinnate foliage. Now this lovely flimsy foliage attracts the little birds, and we just had a yellow thornbill in this wattle. It's just flown out, but you can still hear it singing. And this is this bipinnate sort of flimsy leaf also, as well as attracting the little birds, it deters noisy miners. They don't feel secure in it. Another unique quality it has is that it flowers twice a year. So this wattle is flowering when no other wattles are flowering. It has a beautiful, unique scent, just a gorgeous scent. The pods, when they're green, and it's a prolific flowerer and produces prolific amount of fruit, which are the wattle pods. And when the wattle pods are green, the superb parrot, which is a threatened species of bird, comes in and they love eating the green pods. When the pods ripen and they split open and the seed falls out to the ground, we get a lot of the common bronze-winged pigeons and also some of the other parrots. The other thing about this tree that I really like, or shrub that I really like, is it produces a lot of wattle sap on the trunks. Every time a branch breaks off, it produces sap. This sap is really important for some of our native mammals, such as the threatened squirrel glider. It's just a mob of eastern rosellas flew past, and you can hear the blue wrens in the background here. This place is full of little birds, and the grey fantail. I think that's a weebill calling over there. It's like this all the time, just full of the little birds because of all the wattles we've planted here. But I digress. So the squirrel glider in winter, when there are no insects around, depends on the sap of wattles like Acacia dinieye and also Acacia dealbata, which is the silver wattle that grows a little bit east and south of here. And the squirrel glider and the sugar glider also play a really valuable role in the environment, in that a family of squirrel gliders can eat up to 5 kilos of Christmas beetles in a year. Now, Christmas beetles are thought to be one of the main reasons for dieback, one of the main causes of eucalyptus dieback. So the eucalypts need the wattles and they need the squirrel gliders. The other great thing about Acacia dinieye is that it reproduces very readily. All that massive seed that it produces means that you always get young dinieye coming up. And here's one that's a couple of years old now. There's another one over there, and all through here there are lots of little dinieyes that have reproduced from seed. Some of them may be suckering from the roots of the parent plant. Now, these trees or shrubs, large shrubs, will live anywhere between, say, 10 and 20 years, and some of the ones that we've planted, say, 12 or 13 years ago have died. But around them you'll find a whole new generation of Acacia dinieye. And there's one over here that actually died. But you can see there's a young one here, which we've protected when it was younger by putting fallen branches around it as a bit of a tree guard. And there's another one through there on the other side of this dead one. But this big branch that's fallen down, and this is what they do, they drop their branches. But that branch catches all the grass seed that blows through the environment, and it's holding all that grass there, and that is a great little habitat for some of the smaller birds to feed in, to forage in, but also possibly to nest in. One of the birds that we have seen here in the past is the speckled warbler, which is another threatened species, a lovely little bird with a beautiful song, and they nest in these dense bushy areas. That's what they need. They need this fallen timber. A lot of people might say, well, you know, they're short-lived, it's died, it looks ugly. To me, that is still a really valuable plant. The little birds still go through it all the time, picking off insects. Bigger birds might perch up their birds of prey, and it's still providing some protection. And when that branch or that main trunk finally falls down, we will leave it there because it will be extra ground habitat. And that's what these plantings are often missing. They're missing those big logs and the fallen timber.
Not to mention the carbon that it also then adds back into the soil and continues that cycle and helps to sequester into the ground.
Absolutely, yeah. So really important role. And that's just what wattles do. They're a colonising plant. Some of them aren't very long-lived, but while they're living, we call them the James Dean of the plant world. Live hard, die young. They're doing a lot of good for the soil. They're a legume, like clover, and so they're capturing nitrogen, and they're making it available to other plants. Here's a dinieye, a Dean's wattle, that's lost quite a lot of its branches. They've fallen down. They're providing some great habitat, and I found a shingleback lizard under here, and I actually went and got some terracotta pipes that we have, and I put them down there as extra habitat and hiding areas for the shingleback lizards. So the combination of that and all this beautiful fallen timber, and then all the grass seed that's entangled in there, plus the live wattle branches, bit of grass growing up, provides fabulous habitat for lizards. I've also found echidnas in here. There's a lot of evidence of echidna diggings, recent echidna diggings, so it's a great habitat for the echidnas as well. This is another beautiful wattle that we've planted here. It's a locally growing wattle. It's called Acacia acinasia, or gold dust wattle, and you can see why it's called gold dust. It has these beautiful cascading branches, just chock-a-block with wattle flowers and a small leaf. It's a spreading wattle, probably up to about 2 meters in height, but much broader than that. And it can get quite dense as well. And it's seen sometimes growing on roadsides. I've noticed it on roadsides from time to time in the area.
So one of the myths about wattles is that they cause hay fever, but I'm an avid hay fever sufferer and I'm not suffering here. So the reason why is because wattle pollen grains are actually quite heavy, they're large and they're sticky. Wattles are pollinated by insects, so the pollen actually falls to the ground rather than being dispersed by the wind. So most of the pollen grains will end up on the ground, as opposed to your grasses and pine trees and things like that, which are pollinated by wind, which are dispersed across the landscape, and they're probably more the cause of most hay fever symptoms. As you can see, no sneezing at all.
This beautiful, dense, drooping wattle is called Acacia vestita. Weeping boree is one of its common names. I've heard it called hairy wattle, and there's a little yellow thornbill just over here feeding in its branches in the foliage. It grows to about 7 meters in height, but very spreading, and as I mentioned before, very dense. And you can see by planting them a few meters apart, you get this lovely shaded area. It's one of the best wattles for livestock shelter, and we've noticed that our sheep and the alpacas love to shelter underneath them, and even when it's a beautiful day like today, they're often sheltering under it, and I think it's because they feel secure with the canopy above them. It's not producing a lot of flower this year. I think it's still recovering from the drought, but normally it's covered in golden flowers that just cascade down. So it has a beautiful weeping habit, but it's very dense and it's a great nesting site for some of the little birds. In this area here, I've planted a little grove of prickly wattles, as well as another plant that's quite prickly, the Bassaria spinosa, or blackthorn, native blackthorn. And now that we've planted all these wattles and they're all mature, we've got a lot of little birds in. As I said, we've had the little birds here for many years now. And so what I'm doing by planting this grove, and there's about 10 prickly wattles and bassarias that I've planted in here, I'm trying to produce little thicket, a dense prickly thicket, where the little birds can safely nest. So that's the idea of all these tree guards. They all house prickly wattles. This wattle is kangaroo thorn, Acacia paradoxa. It's one of the best of the prickly wattles for little birds, and the ones that we've planted about 12 years ago, every one of them has had yellow rump thornbills nesting in them. Planted probably about a dozen different species of wattle in this particular planting. And what we've tried to do is put in as much variety as possible. They're all local wattles, to have that structural diversity. So this lovely wattle here, which is a late flowering wattle, so it's not in flower yet, but when it does, it'll be covered. It's called the Western Silver Wattle. I've also heard it called the Western Golden Wattle. So it's a later flowering one. Now, it's a great wattle because it's long-lived. So it's slow growing to begin with because it's long-lived. But as you can see, it grows to a few metres in height. But it grows with its branches right down to the ground. And this is another area where I've seen shingleback lizards coming out from these wattles. So again, this lovely dense understory where lizards and echidnas and little birds can safely live and forage. Behind it is a beautiful tree. So this is the tallest of the wattles that we've planted. This is Acacia implexa, or lightwood, and it grows into a tree to about 15 metres. So because it's a tree, it's very long-lived as well. It's not a short-lived wattle. You see these growing a lot on the roadsides, and often with these dark brown to black galls growing in them. But those galls can also be food for various birds. It's called Acacia implexa because its seed pods are very tangled. They're like a big tangle of seed pods. And implexa actually means a tangle. So that's why they're called implexa. The other great thing about them is that they very readily reproduce after they get to a certain age. So all around here, through here, these are all young Acacia implexas. They seem to sucker from the roots mainly. So from where we've planted one tree, we now have a dozen or so. So through here, so these are all Acacia decoras here, providing this fabulous ground habitat. You can see you can hear the little grey fantail in there. All the lovely seeds from these native grasses have caught in the branches, and they'll drop their seed, and you can see underneath the wattles that it's all green, so it's great food for the sheep. There's another terracotta pipe over there as habitat for the lizards. And around here come the apostle birds. The apostle birds and the white-winged choughs and the grey-crowned babblers all love to scratch and poke in the ground. They help distribute the seeds all around, and they help to break up the leaf litter mulch and create this wonderful soil that grows underneath all these wattles. So this is Acacia implexa here. It's a fairly branched one. We have other ones that are much more single stem. It has a lovely long falcate leaf, which means sickle-shaped leaf, a rounded leaf. Another nice quality of the implexa is that they're one of the wattles that flowers in summer rather than at this time of the year, so you won't find any flowers on it at the moment. But in summer, in January, February, these trees, oh, and there's a little grey fantail just landed in there. In January and February, these trees are just covered in the most beautiful pale creamy blossom. They're very attractive, and of course they provide really important food for the bees and the other insects. And over here we have another Acacia dinieye, and the grey fantail has just flown over there, so
it's following
it's
us.
leading the way. again, just a fabulous tree. You can see a branch has broken off over there, but we've used it to protect a young one that is naturally regenerating from this parent tree. And then to its left, we have another smaller Acacia vestita, the weeping bouree. Very dense underneath, very dense foliage, great for little birds to nest in.
It's a great example, Mikla, here of how underneath the wattles the grass is growing right to the trunk of the tree.
Yes.
Because it's providing all that nitrogen underneath. Whereas over here with the eucalypts, it's quite bare underneath. So in terms of a grazing potential, yeah, the wattles are certainly beating the eucalypts.
That's right. They're just so important. And this is so I'll just point out, these here are young implexes that have come from this tree. So this is what happened. Actually, that might have been one that was planted and it's died, but all these young ones have grown up in its place. And that's what they do. And we've put branches around it when they were little to protect them. This tree here, that was a a red-rumped parrot. It just flew through. This is a white box tree here, and that's a red gum. Now this whole area, this whole planting, which is nearly 1 kilometre long, and it starts off about 40 metres wide and it ends up about 80 metres wide down the end. This was part of a totally bare paddock once, and we've planted these species. We chose these species because these are the species that grow in a box gum woodland. So this particular box gum woodland is called white box, yellow box, Blakely's red gum, grassy woodland. And so we've, as well as planting the correct wattles for that ecosystem, we've also planted the correct eucalypt. So white box, yellow box, Blakely's red gum are the 3 species of eucalypt that we've planted in here as well. And we've tried not to put too many eucalypts in. We've tried to put mainly wattles. We also have some other shrubs, the hotbush, native hotbush, dinieye, but mainly wattles, because out in the wild that's what you normally find in a box gum woodland. This little fenced off area is very overgrown with weed now, of course, after all the rain we've had. But this was to be a dense little grove of wattles and other species where we were hoping the little birds would nest. And this beautiful cream flowered, very spiky wattle in front of us is Acacia genistifolia, or early wattle. Often, again, seen growing along the roadsides. Around Bumbaldry I've seen it. We're very lucky here at Rosemont in that we have the Weddin Mountain National Park as a backdrop to our property. On the southern side, it provides a really beautiful vista. This is one of our whopper paddocks, and whopper stands for whole of paddock rehabilitation. The whoppers were devised by Greening Australia, and Greening Australia came and direct seeded these paddocks for us. It was done in September 2012, so all these plants that you can see here are just on 8 years old this month. Again, there's a combination of wattles and eucalypts. In this area here, there's probably a few too many eucalypts. They're a bit dense, they've come up a bit dense, and we may cut some down in the future and lay them down as ground habitat. But there's a variety of these beautiful wattles, and this one is another glorious one. This is Acacia spectabilis, or mudgy wattle. Now, mudgy wattle is a lovely wattle to have if you want something to grow very fast. And with the direct seeding, the mudgy wattle, or Acacia spectabilis, is the first one to germinate and come through the ground. It rushes up. It's quite an open a sort of white trunked small tree or shrub really, but it's not long lived. So it's fast growing, but it's not necessarily a long lived wattle. It might live between 10 and 20 years. But again, like all the wattles, it reproduces very readily. So this is the fastest growing that I've noticed of all the wattles. This wattle beside it is another one that we have growing on our place naturally up in the hills. This is varnish wattle, or Acacia verniciflua or verniciflua. And it's unique in that it has this beautiful varnish smell when it's been raining, or if you rub the leaves. It has a really lovely varnish smell and quite a varnish look to its leaves. Again, a beautiful yellow flower. This is a later flowering wattle, so it's not quite out yet, but lots of buds. Grows quite dense. This particular one grows quite dense, and again I've found little yellow rump thornbills nesting in these. All the ones that you can see that are bright yellow in here are the spectabilis, Acacia spectabilis or mudgy wattle. They're quite prolific in their flowering. So they produce, again, a lot of seed pods. Some fantastic ground mulch around them. And you can hear the little birds singing in this paddock. Often western gerygony and yellow rump thornbills.
So Mikla, the direct seeding, you found that a fairly time and cost efficient way to plant the wattles?
It's a brilliant way of getting plants into the ground fast. If you want to cover a large area, this is a 10-hectare paddock, and to plant all this would have taken so long. But Greening Australia paid for this. We got a grant through Greening Australia to do this. And they come in with their ute. Wayne had to spray the rows in advance, months in advance, a couple of times. And then Greening Australia come in and they have their direct seeding machine on the back of the ute. 2 buckets, one with the wattle seed, one with the eucalypt seed. And the seed just falls out of these buckets and goes into the rips that are formed by the direct seeding machine, and then you just wait. And yeah, within 5 years we were putting our livestock, our sheep, back in to these paddocks, and brilliant habitat, brilliant shelter, but also browsing. And there is evidence that the sheep eating the pods, they think it's the tannin in the pods, acts as a worming agent. So they also eat the leaves. So it's there's a little honey eater flying over. So they're excellent for the wildlife, but also for the livestock. We always move the sheep in here when they were lambing.
Fantastic shelter.
Fantastic shelter, yeah. And so what they do, and I think they do it a bit differently now, but there's 4 rows of plantings of wattles and eucalypts, and then there's a 30-metre gap, and that's where the sheep can come out and graze. So on a really hot day when it's 40-something degrees, they can shelter under the trees, and then they only have to walk a few metres when they want to come out and graze. So it's a really stress-free way of raising your sheep.
And the wattles seem to come back okay after the grazing?
Yes, well, you have to wait till they're a certain size. That's why you're not supposed to put your sheep in for 5 years. But after 5 years, there's no worries at all. And the thing is, there are so many wattles that, you know, they're not going to damage them. They might break a few branches off, but that's okay, because then the branches are on the ground and they're habitat for the ground fauna. This wattle here is another beautiful wattle, as they all are. This is Acacia Montana, or Montana. It's mallee wattle. It likes to grow in grey box woodlands, perhaps a little bit west of Grenfell, but it's a beautiful, spreading, quite dense shrub, hence its name, mallee wattle. Again, a wattle that grows right down to the ground, so it provides all that fantastic habitat for ground-dwelling animals. A beautiful golden yellow flower. And the interesting thing about it is the seed pod is quite hairy. It's white with white hair. So it's quite a sort of a fuzzy seed pod. It's growing here. These have all just come up from seed. A dinieye on the left of it, and a spectabilis, which is a little bit past its prime flowering, and a vestita. And that's what happens in direct seeded paddocks. You don't know what's going to come up and how close they're going to grow. But again, it's a nice, dense little area for the little birds. And there's always little birds in here. Yellow thornbills, yellow rump thornbills, western gerygony, blue bonnets, the parrot, as well as some of the bigger birds as well. This is another beautiful wattle growing on our place, and this is actually growing wild up in our hills with our beautiful mugger ironbark and grey box and red stringy bark trees. This is Acacia doratoxylon, otherwise known as Karawang. Karawang is its common name. Doratoxylon, Dora means spear and toxylon means wood. So it's spear wood, and the Aboriginal people, the First Nations people of Australia, used the wood from Karawang to make their spears. The Aborigines also relied heavily on many, many species of acacia, which grew all the way throughout Australia. And of course, their time here on the Australian continent goes back more than 60,000 years that we know at this stage. They relied heavily on the high nutritional value and the wide availability of the seed of the wattle from a number of species. And they either ground the seed into a flour and mixed it with water, and it was eaten either raw as a paste or it was cooked as a damper. They also ate the young green pods of wattles, and these were eaten either raw or steamed or roasted. The sweet gums produced by wattle were eaten as sweets, and even the insects that lived on or in the wattle, such as witchetty grubs and honey ants, were also eaten. As well as food, the Aborigines used wattles for medicine. At least 30 different species of wattles were traditionally used by Indigenous Australians for this purpose. And different parts of the wattle plant, such as the leaves, the branches, the bark, etc., pods and the seeds, were prepared in different ways, and they either drank them or they applied them externally to cure ailments, such as flu and coughs and colds and skin ailments. The wood of many acacias was used for fuel, as well as for a variety of tools, such as this Karawang. And they also used wattles for many other purposes, such as for shelter, utensils such as digging sticks, weapons such as clubs, shields and boomerangs, musical instruments such as clapsticks, for firewood, glue, string, soap, and even dyes. One of the myths that perpetuates about wattles is that they're all short-lived, and a lot of people are put off from planting wattles because they think that they're not going to survive for very long. Now that is true of a lot of wattles. They might live for 10 to 20 years, grow to 3 to 4 metres in height, play a really important role while they're alive, reproduce rapidly so that by the time they die they're surrounded by a whole grove of wattles. This is the weeping mile, Acacia pendula, and this is one of the species that is a really long-lived wattle. These can live for up to 200 years. They're a beautiful plant. They have a lovely yellow flower. This is a wattle that flowers in summer, so there's no flower on it at the moment. But this is an example of one of the wattles that is long-lived. I think and it grows into a tree. I think one of the reasons that myth perpetuates is because when wattles started becoming popular as a shrub to plant, the most common one was Acacia baileyana, which is the Cootamundra wattle, and it is known as a short-lived wattle. So people associated that with all wattles, but it is certainly not the case. And this beautiful mile, which we planted here about 10 years ago, hopefully will be here for the next couple of 100 years, if not more.
So there you have it, the wonderful world of wattles, and what a diverse genus of plants that they are. They play such an important ecological role in our environment. And here on Mikla and Wayne's property, you can see that they have a great dual purpose as well, being able to be grazed by stock and provide that habitat for wildlife. Hope you've enjoyed our virtual tour today, and that next year we'll be able to see you in person and go for a real life wander through the wattles. Thank you to Mikla today for all your wonderful knowledge and for sharing your property with us. It's been fantastic, and thank you for watching.
It's July and the winter sun is shining, and the Cootamundra wattle is my friend. For all at once my childhood never left me, 'cause wattle blossoms bring it back again.